Are you a conscious leader or a visionary or a thought leader in this world? And would you like to create some of your own content in collaboration with us? If so, please head over to theatlasofconsciousness.com to check out more of our video and production content. We would love to work with you to get more of these new Earth messages out into the world. Thank you once again for listening. And now, on to the episode. Power is holding your own artistic vision of harmony, regardless of the war and chaos outside of you. Power is the moment by moment reconciliation with this big vision, choosing the highest harmony in every conceivable way you can. This is the Atlas Emotion Series, where we share edge of the earth ideas for a new world. And welcome to another Atlas Emotion Series podcast. My name is Ella. Today I have a big episode for you, perhaps the biggest of all of the episodes that I've done on this series. It's going to be called Creation, and that's creation with a capital C. That is you as the creator, understanding that it is your uniqueness and everything that is built from that creates our universe. Understanding light and darkness, creating them, forgiving them. We're creating all of it. And we've heard this so many times, but what does that really mean? So today's episode, it's a big one. It's all about creation, as in we are creating, as in creation, the thing that surrounds all of us, as in both at once. And I'm going to be talking about embodying that at its fullest form, embodying creation with a capital C. So this podcast is a part of 4: time travel, then prosperity, gravity, and this, the last one, creation. Time travel talked all about how in supporting ourselves, we can transcend time, and time seems to move miraculously, almost. And then prosperity talked about a whole new planet that we can start from within and create without ourselves. And then gravity, that we are the gravitational centers to everything we desire in our lives. Isn't that cool? That we don't have to go anywhere unless we feel compelled to. We can attract everything to ourselves based on our intuition, our feeling, and our alignment to our heart. So creation with a capital C. Let me just dive right in. So this podcast came to me because I was going for a run at the top of my hill, which is a beautiful place. Basically, there's this trail that runs through these forests, and they almost feel like ancient forests. And I got this sense of millions of years of understanding, these ancient frequencies, that somehow, these trees and the rainforests, it's baked into them. They have this understanding that courses through them of creation, of the act of creation, and how the mechanism and how it all works. And we are just starting to come to that. And I had these thoughts come to me whilst I was among these trees, and I was feeling so refreshed by these ancient trees, this ancient frequency, that it's just so easy. Nature's gifts are so easy. They just give you everything that you need. And there's this huge space available there. And just as I had that thought, this flock of black cockatoos flew right past me. So black cockatoos are like my positive omen. They are beautiful and majestic and graceful birds that are just a wonder, and never stop being a wonder to look at and experience. And so that's this feeling that's available for us. It almost goes beyond this state of grace to a state of complete knowing about creation, and that it's just so easy and nature gifts it to us. So I'm going to take you guys back to start this podcast. Back to my beginning as a filmmaker. And I'm going to tie this all into how it works with a big capital C creation. So as a filmmaker, the idea is we all have a vision, and I had to learn first to be a great creator before I could even remotely understand what it is to be a great capital C creator that is manifester or aligner with soul or spirit. I had to learn first to be a great filmmaker. So what did I learn as a filmmaker that's now what I live and embody and allows me to act from this place as I create my life? Well, I always had these visions that would arrive to me. Whenever I'd get a new project, I would just see the end product in my mind. And I basically, I kind of work backwards in that I just had to learn how to work with the resources around me and the people around me to bring that vision forward. Because that vision always seemed to be beyond what anyone could see. And it also was beyond what I, should have seen was perceivable or possible. But for whatever reason that was, I just wanted to create that vision into reality, and I never really doubted it, which is strange because some of those visions were really big. But whatever that was that I had, the ability to believe that this picture in my mind could be created is everything that I needed to know for what I now live. I was doubted a lot of times, and people would definitely question what I was doing, but I always held on to that vision that I had in my mind. And I just became really resourceful with what was around me and tried to find new ways of achieving that vision. I understood that whatever it was in me back then, my heart was always in command, and I listened. I already had it in me to listen to that natural artistry that lived within me, and the gentle, soft knowing of what that vision was. And how did I really get there in my heart to being able to deliver that vision that would arrive in my mind's eye over and over and over? Well, it was just time, and it was the ability to unwaveringly line up to my heart and choose that and keep choosing that it was a real place, that vision I had in my mind's eye. And I just kept working with whatever I had over many years and working hard and having discipline to choose that vision. So that is what I wanted to preface today's episode with, that it's all about your vision and the ability to line up with that place where your heart says, hey, this is real. And, letting yourself drop into that. And when you do that, it becomes the whole world. So you have your own artistic vision. And it's important to know that you, as an individual, as a creative spirit, your fresh voice and your uniqueness is the celebration. So I've been on a full-on journey when it comes to my expression, and specifically my gender expression, which I kind of expressed in some of the previous episodes. I've had to face, shadows, nightmares, negative responses, but really when I come down to that place, that millions of years of understanding, I realize it's just expression. How I choose to show myself is just another expression. And what this is, this artistic vision and this feeling we have inside of ourselves, however nuanced that may look in terms of putting together all the different pieces of our environment, knowing that uniqueness of who we are is the thing, is the king, and is ultimately what it's all about. Your uniqueness is the voice of God, and your job is just to open yourself up enough to be the conduit. And that's what, this whole gender journey of mine has forced me basically to come up against, that it really is the most beautiful thing for me to be uniquely exactly who I am. And that's a total celebration of both genders, female and male. And it's, in that place, there is such freedom, but ultimately it's just that I'm owning me and my perspective and my artistic direction and choice. So let's go even deeper. let's talk about heaven and hell. So I know that's heavy, and I told you it was going to be a big episode, but I have to talk about it because in my soul's experience, I have felt this duality. I felt this duality of these bright, soaring, beautiful experiences and the darkness of places in my life, of ending up in hospital and levels of judgment that were so dark, and voices, just negative voices in my head and negative people and experiences that formed the dark or the shadow side of my experience. So it's been very contrasting. It's been very, very bright and very, very dark in my experience. So here are some of the things that came to me about this paint palette of our soul, which is on one end heaven and on the other end hell. Know that the darkness is an act of creation. And read that, an act of creation, capital C. That is, and isn't this cool? It's a screenplay act and method of a screenplay. So what does that even mean? What am I even saying there? I'm saying that the darkness in our lives is an act, is just a part of the greater screenplay of who we are. It's an act in the greater life that we're living. So if you see it as, act 3, and you have to go to act 4, and then there's act 5 after that, instead of thinking that darkness and that really dark place is the entire movie, it's just a part of the movie. Here's something that came to me as I was waking up one night from a nightmare. If you do not own it, and then in brackets hell, you will never own your power. So if I don't own the deepest, darkest place that I could imagine, of which I've imagined it and lived it, then I can never fully own who I am and my power, because me creating that place is basically, that's my positive energy, and that's the brightness of who I am going into creating a heavy, dark place. And the way this relates to our world is to know that we have on this planet, in so many ways, all of us are creating this deep, dark place, and we have almost entire institutions dedicated to creating these dark places. And we're taught to believe that that is more real than the light of us, of our world fame. And we're taught that the darkness is more real than the light. When really, what came to me is that they're equal creations. They are on an equal playing field. It's all about how we put our energy into it, and what we put our energy into. Are we putting it into the dark, or are we putting it into the light? I found it a lot of the times very, very challenging to put our energy into the light, especially when we're facing such darkness. But when you get to this place, you realize they're just equal creations, and you can choose one way or the other. You're really starting to own the power of your soul to create all the experiences in your life. Which leads me to the next point. Your soul is the whole landscape. Your soul is the whole landscape. It is the darkness and it is the light. What came to me was this thought: heaven and hell is the artistic tapestry of our soul, our paint palette. Everything that we see around us is the landscape of our souls, of our collective souls. And this is all the landscape of our soul, our heart. It's kind of an interesting thing to get your head around. Even the darkest places that you could imagine in some way are part of the landscape of our souls. And that's what I mean about owning that really dark place. If you own it and love it and forgive it, then you bring it into the brightness of the whole landscape, and you create a much brighter landscape. Whereas if you push it away, and I think a lot of us already know this, if you push it away, you're just going to keep creating that same dark place. What our soul is doing by guiding us through the darkness of these landscapes and the brightness of other, surrounding landscapes it is being the greatest artist that could ever be. leading us through dark and bright sounding notes to create the most harmonious experience for ourselves. It is in going through those dark and those bright things that we cultivate ultimate harmony. We create the most beautiful, through our bodies and our experiences, the most beautiful, harmonious life. Which leads me into the next point, which is all about harmony. So the higher self does not think in terms of years or linear time. It thinks in terms of freedom or constriction. That is judgment or harmony. I thought this was a really cool phrase to come to me, because the times that I've been in ultimate constriction, I think the only reason that I've come through them is because I saw them as opportunities. I saw that in some way my own heaven was trapped in this constriction, and it was just about me working through and finding that heaven and opening that up. So what brings more heaven for us? I was able to identify that hell experience of chaos and judgment, and then the heaven experience of space, belonging, creative horizons that are unending and space to be creative. And I was able to ask myself, why wasn't I allowing that heaven? Why didn't I believe in those creative horizons, in that space and in that creativity? I was able to ask myself, what brings more heaven? And in every experience I faced, the dark or the light, because I kept asking that question, I watched as the darkness is integrated into more and more harmony. And it ultimately is the wealth that I feel inside of me, is that the richness of all of my experiences combined, the darkness and the light, have made me as wealthy as I feel inside. It allowed me, facing those dark experiences, allowed me to ascend into higher and higher states of harmony, as opposed to facing them or pushing them away and descending into lower states of chaos. In this particular last half of the year, I've really realized that the real dollar value, so the real wealth that we hold, is harmony. Can we harmonize the great darkness and the great light so they work together to create a harmonious environment? And so that's what the real wealth building is. It's about confronting our fears and understanding that the more and more harmony we create is the true measure of our success. So that was a little bit of a discussion about creation with a capital C. It's about understanding that you are the great creator. That is, you are the creator of all of our soul's landscape. So whatever you may be looking at that seems either dark or light, you can face it and face it and face it with love, and it harmonizes more and more and more. And that's what makes you ultimately feel wealthy and ultimately be wealthy in the end. I just mean feel wealthy in your and rich in your experiences, and then as a result get that manifestation on the outside. I want to leave you guys with a bit of a quote that came from a healing of mine that kind of summarizes this whole concept of creation with a capital C. Creation with a capital C, which is that ancient knowing we have inside of ourselves, that it's all fortified and created from us. So you have learned from a very young age that war and not harmony is the way of life. Life is constituted by war, life evolves from war, and war births survival. This is, in fact, far from the truth. Life is birthed by and from source, which is the act of love itself. War is a byproduct of disconnection with that source of life. This healing is to allow a reconciliation between your two parts, the fullest part of you and the you acting in the now. So there shall be no war, only harmony. War is the violent tearing between who you know yourself to be and what you currently believe. And harmony is the reconciliation between those two. Reconcile those parts and act from the knowing of who you are. So your job is to reconcile those two parts, the heaven experience and the hell experience inside of you, and to act from the knowing of who you are, the center point, the integration. When I started this series, I talked about time travel, and I talked about how I found myself choosing to do guided meditations on support when I was feeling so lonely, and the result was my friends manifesting on my doorstep and new projects manifesting without me putting any effort into it. And that's what it is to reconcile those parts and act from the knowing of who you are. I am supported. I am loved. I am belonging. And in that reconciliation is created a whole new world and a whole new reality from the center point of our heart and what it truly believes. So let me leave you with one last note about becoming creation, capital C creation, and owning that embodiment of everything emerges from you, the dark and the light. Power is holding your own artistic vision of harmony, regardless of the war and chaos outside of you. Power is the moment-by-moment reconciliation with this big vision, choosing the highest harmony in every conceivable way you can. That is this episode, which is probably one of the biggest episodes I've ever put out there, all about creation with a capital C. And the conclusion to this series that is bringing us closer and closer to transcending time, owning a prosperous planet, becoming the centers of our own gravity, and knowing that we are capital C creation. And as we duck and dive through the heaven and hell of our experiences, and we continue to face and integrate all those challenges, we just become richer and richer and wealthier in experience. And that's what translates and transforms to a beautiful new world for us as individuals and a beautiful new planet for us as a collective. So in the spirit of all things capital C creation, I also have to let you guys know that I'm parking the Atlas Emotion series for now and indefinitely. And so hopefully there's not too many sad faces about that, but I feel to move on. I'm producing a feature-length cinematic podcast, which is all about my story of awakening. So I'll be diving into that, and it feels like my magnum opus. So there'll be more podcasts from the Atlas to come. I'll be working on music and writing an EP, and I'll be moving to a bigger space in my physical self as well as where I live. That's the next step for me. But it's been really cool because just yesterday night I was thinking, wow, like I have been doing this since 2018, so it's been over 2 years. And sometimes I was putting out podcasts a couple of times a month. So these podcasts really were inspiring me to become my own personal coach. And I always felt pulled to put out these new podcasts because the ideas that I was sharing, well, I was learning them first, and they kept me rising. Even when the outside world wasn't showing me what I felt and the vision I had inside of me, the podcast would help keep me going and keep me improving. For example, I received the podcast idea, A New Home, 5 months before I lived in my dream home. And in fact, I was living in a very judgmental place internally and externally when I received that podcast idea. And what that podcast idea taught me was that I needed to become belonging inside of me to receive the place of my belonging outside. I learned of the economy of harmony, which taught me that harmony was the place to be inside of me, and that when I became harmony inside of me, I would attract all that I needed harmoniously to me. And it absolutely has. I have my dream house, the most aligned work. You guys are listening to these podcasts, all of these podcasts, the Atlas. it is true. As we become harmony, our dream lives come toward us. And then one of the podcasts I did as part of this series, prosperity, I received the idea and the feeling for that when I was in fact living in what felt like a kind of poverty-stricken feeling. To be prosperous, to live on a prosperous planet, to have freedom financially seemed like only a hope and a dream, and it wasn't a reality. But it's a reality I now live, and I have these podcasts to thank me for it. And so I'm so hopeful that they're doing similar things for you guys, because they've absolutely changed my life. As I've received the wisdom and acted upon it, it's transformed everything. And then there were the leaders that I spoke to, Bianca, who talks with animals, Dr. Carol, who is an integrative oncologist and taught me that actually one of the greatest cures to some of our greatest illnesses is self-expression. And one of my favorite podcasts with my friend Cole Jones showed me what it was to embody my core truth. I mean, I think he was such a light, and still is a beacon and a light in my life, showing me what it looks like to own your core truth unequivocally, no matter what the outside world may be showing to you. And of course, that's the journey we're all on. So things aren't all over. In fact, they're just evolving. And the Atlas as a production company is still going. We're still collaborating. Actually, my dream is to create kind of like a hub of podcasts, but for new world concepts and new world ideas. So if you are listening to this and you're an aspiring podcast producer and you want to express your grand idea and you would love for it to live in the Atlas world, send me through your pictures to my email. And if you want to work with us as a team member, in fact, if you have a burning desire to work with us in marketing, in production, in operations, please reach out. I would love to talk to you. And of course, if you are a visionary or a purpose-driven leader and you have an advertisement or you want to share your message in a global way, please reach out anytime for collaborations on video projects and edge of this earth storytelling and podcasts. This is my dream, and I have loved it every second since the Atlas was born all those years ago. And if you want to keep watching us grow and make bigger and bolder things, you can also donate, or you could become a patron to the Atlas. So head over to theatlasofconsciousness.com/support. It has been just unbelievably spectacular to be working on this podcast. And I'm not going to say I'm going to park it completely, because I don't know what the future will hold. I just do know for now that I feel to work on projects that are longer form, and they will be diving in to my creativity at an even deeper level. And I know that to grow this podcast, I have to grow significantly. So before I return, I'm sure I will be an entirely different person and in entirely different form again. And in the meantime, I'm moving on to those longer projects. I feel like this podcast, Capital C Creation, is a really perfect one to leave you guys with. I know that I'll be a totally different person when I return, or better said, I will probably be simply more myself. So thank you, everyone. Thank you once again for listening. It has been an absolute blast to join you here. If you are missing some of these podcasts, I suggest that you go back through our back catalog, because there's been so many podcasts, so many gems along the way that will continue to support you. See which ones you're drawn to at which time, and they will be helping you in that exact moment of your life. And we will continue all to evolve together. Thank you once again for listening for a while. Until I see you again next time, I love you all. It's been an absolute blast. And thank you for joining me on this podcast, the Atlas Emotion Series podcast, which is all about sharing how our self-awareness and our emotions ripple out, affect, create, and build our world. Looking forward to watching you guys build the most incredible new worlds with all of your inner vision, wisdom, and light. See you again soon. Goodbye.